One file, 180 lines. It runs 3 production apps for me, invoicing, an inbox bot, and a lead engine, without me re-explaining anything to Claude ever again. If you're using Claude Code and you feel like you're babysitting it every single session, copy-pasting context, repeating yourself, watching it forget what it did yesterday, this is the part nobody teaches. Most tutorials throw subagents, MCP servers, and 4-hour courses at you. I'll show you the boring file that makes all of that unnecessary. By the end, you'll have the exact template, the slash commands, and the folder layout. I'm Lazar, I ship client automations from this setup every day. Let's start with what those tutorials skip. Here's the situation I see constantly with solopreneurs trying to use Claude Code. They install it, they get excited, they ship one feature, and then by session 3, they're already exhausted. Why? Because every single conversation starts with them re-explaining the project. What stack are we using? Where the database lives? Which folder has the API roots? What naming convention they prefer? What not to touch? And Claude is great in the moment, but it has no idea what you did yesterday unless you tell it. So you end up burning 20 minutes of context on setup before you do any real work. Multiply that by 5 sessions a day, and you've lost 2 hours just orienting the AI. That's the real cost nobody talks about. Now, the standard advice you'll hear is build subagents, add MCP servers, layer on skills, use orchestration frameworks. And look, those tools have a place, but for a one-person business running a few apps, it's theater. It's complexity you don't need. You're optimizing the wrong layer. The actual leverage is in one file at the root of your project. It's called Claude.md. Claude Code reads it automatically every time you open a session in that directory. No imports, no config, no setup. It's just there, and Claude treats it as gospel. The reason most people get bad results from Claude Code isn't that the model is weak. It's that they are feeding it a blank page and asking it to remember a business. So let me walk you through what actually goes in this file. Using the real template I use for an invoicing application that processes hundreds of invoices a week. The file has 5 sections, and they go in this order on purpose. Section 1 is project context, 3 to 5 sentences. What does this app do? Who uses it? What's the business goal? This sounds obvious, but most people skip it, and Claude ends up making decisions that are technically correct and commercially stupid. When Claude knows the app is for small business owners who hate complexity, it stops suggesting enterprise patterns. Section 2 is the stack. List every major dependency with its version. Front-end framework, back-end framework, database, auth library, deployment target, payment processor. Be explicit. If you're on Postgres 16, say Postgres 16. If you use a specific ORM, name it. This kills 90% of the wrong library suggestions. Section 3 is conventions. This is where the magic compounds. How do you name files? How do you structure routes? Do you use server actions or API routes? Do you write tests before or after? Where do environment variables live? What's your commit message format? Every convention you write here is a decision Claude doesn't have to ask about and doesn't have to guess. Section 4 is commands, not slash commands yet, just the shell commands that matter. How do you run the dev server? How do you run tests? How do you deploy? How do you check the database? Claude will use these instead of inventing wrong ones. Section 5 is Guardrails. This is the most underrated section. List what Claude should never do. Never modify the migrations folder without asking. Never commit secrets. Never rewrite the billing logic without a confirmation. Never run destructive database commands. This single section has saved me from disasters more times than I can count. That's the file. About 180 lines when it's complete. Now layer 2, the commands folder. Inside your project, create a folder called .claude, and inside that, a folder called commands. Every markdown file you drop in there becomes a slash command inside Claude Code. So I have one called deploy, one called test, one called invoice check, one called lead scan, one called DB backup, and one called release notes. Each file is just a short prompt that tells Claude exactly what steps to take. Now, instead of typing a paragraph, I type /deploy and Claude runs the full sequence. This is what turns Claude Code from a chat tool into a one-button operator for your business. Layer 3 is the directory layout, especially if you run more than one app. Don't mash everything into one repo and hope context doesn't bleed. Give each business its own folder at the root level. Each folder has its own Claude.md, its own .claude commands, its own conventions. When you CD into that folder and launch Claude Code, it loads only that project's brain. No cross-contamination. No confused suggestions pulling from the wrong code base. 3 apps, 3 folders, 3 context files. One Claude Code, install handles all of them cleanly. Now let me show you what this looks like in practice. I open a fresh terminal. I CD into the invoicing project. I launch Claude Code. I type one sentence, add a feature that flags invoices unpaid for more than 30 days and sends a reminder email using our existing email service. I hit enter. Claude reads CLAUDE.md, sees the stack, sees the conventions, sees that we use a specific email provider, sees the guardrails about not touching billing logic, and it writes the root, the database query, the email template, and the cron job. In the right folder, with the right naming, using the existing patterns, no back and forth, no re-explaining, that's the entire point. The file did the work. The realistic numbers on this, writing a solid Claude.md takes you about 90 minutes the first time, maybe 2 hours if you're being careful. After that, you save somewhere between 4 and 8 hours a week, depending on how much you're shipping. Claude usage runs around $40 a month for a serious solo operator. That's replacing what a junior contractor would charge for in a single afternoon. The payback is immediate. If you want the exact Claude.md template plus the 6/ commands I use, head to BizflowAI.io and grab it from the resources section. It's the same file structure we deploy for clients. While you're here, hit subscribe and ring the bell so the next breakdown lands in your feed. And if you want this wired into your specific business, your stack, your tools, your workflows, book a free 30-minute discovery call at BizflowAI.io and we'll map it out together.